Hey, it's Tandy with the Common Ground Alaska podcast. Today we're going to be talking about all things raw milk. So the reason that we're talking about raw milk is because I just feel like on Facebook and even in emails that we receive and comments that we get, there's just a lot of misconceptions about the purchase and like drinking and consumption of raw milk. So we're just going to dig right into everything that I know. And it's certainly not exhaustive, but I think that it will hopefully be informative. So it seems like with this homesteading lifestyle or this agrarian lifestyle, everything we do is dangerous, right? We can our own food. Oh my goodness, that's dangerous. We're going to kill our family. We raise our own meat. We process our own meat. We forage for our food and our medicine. Crazy people. Even something like building a fence sometimes can be a little triggering for some. So it seems like everything that we do is dangerous, and it kind of goes against the grain of maybe modern society. But that's okay. I don't mind that, because people have been doing this for years. People have been drinking raw milk for years. People have been preserving their own food for years. Like, this is not a new thing. But what I think is lacking sometimes is the education to know what's healthy and what's right and what's good, and also some just common sense stuff that we're kind of having to relearn because this isn't a super popular thing that is done anymore. A lot of these traditional skills are not common anymore. So okay, so here's the truth of it. If we're diligent, and if we do things correctly, if we follow proper rules and common sense for canning, if we understand and know plants well for food and medicine, it takes most of the risk out of this crazy yet traditional lifestyle, including raw milk. As long as the milk comes from a healthy cow without mastitis, and it's milked in a clean environment with sanitary tools, it's a clean and safe product, and it's as simple as that. So that almost bears repeating. So let me say this again. When your milk comes out of the cow, as long as the cow itself is healthy, it's a clean product. As long as it's milked into sanitary tools and into, a sanitary bucket, then it's still a clean product and it's perfectly safe. The problem comes, which we're going to talk about in a little bit, when one of those steps isn't taken properly, or when something happens that's outside of the norm. So I want to share a little bit about some kind of rumblings happening behind the scenes, and then we're going to talk about the legalities of buying raw milk in Alaska, and I'll share some best practices about finding a good and safe farm to buy from. So first of all, it seems like raw milk is back in the crosshairs from a legislative standpoint. So on June 6th, the FDA sent a letter to public health and ag agencies stating concern and the need to address new trends of the presence of bird flu, which is the high pathogenic avian influenza. And this is specifically in dairy cattle. This was the advice that was given in this letter. The advice was to start active campaigns to share with the public the dangers of raw milk. Now, this is a blanket statement. This was not specifically for sick cows or infected dairies, but this was across the board. This was encouraged to start sharing the dangers of raw milk. You may have started to see some of this because there are definitely some people who are taking this seriously. Also included in the letter was encouragement for states who allow the sale of raw milk. It was encouragement to reassess their regulations and potentially even stop the sale of raw milk in light of the potential threat of bird flu. In my recent newsletter, which I put out every Tuesday, and we always kind of dig deep into a certain topic. In a recent newsletter, we talked about whether raw milk is safe in light of bird flu. The link to that article is in the bio. The newsletter goes out on Tuesdays. Then we reprint that. We republish that on our blog on our website, commongroundalaska.com, on Saturdays. So you can totally read those. I like to think they're pretty informative. They're awfully fun to write, but I try to kind of put a fun spin on something that's in the news, but really just kind of talk about how it affects Alaskans and what we need to know, kind of what we need to know and what we need to do about it. I'm going to read an excerpt from that newsletter. So it says, bird flu is a disease that started presenting in wild birds, slowly spread to domestic birds, and now is spreading to cattle, primary milk cows. Symptoms in cows include a lack of appetite, so they reduce their feed, a drop in milk production, so they're not producing as much milk, and change consistency in their milk. It's really thick and creamy. It's similar to colostrum. It's kind of a funny color. The milk is definitely changed. So let me just stop right there for a second and say, I know the milk that I pick up from our milk lady. I would know if it was drastically different, and I wouldn't drink it. And I would ask her about it. I would say, I got some really weird milk this week. We're not drinking this. Do you have any idea what's going on? This has never happened before, so I've not had to have this conversation, but I wouldn't be afraid to. So that's the first thing to think. If the cow has bird flu, then his milk changes. So it's quite obvious if the cow is sick. Okay. However, most cows that get this avian influenza are sick for 10 to 14 days and return to normal life, which includes giving good, wholesome milk. Food safety expert and professor at the Institute for Food Laws and Regulations at Michigan State University, his name is Scott Haskell. This is what he had to say about consuming raw milk. He said, I'm very concerned about non-pasteurized milk for salmonella and E. coli, which we're going to talk about in a little bit. But I'm not really concerned about avian influenza. So here's what one expert had to say. He said, I'm definitely concerned about salmonella and E. coli, but really avian influenza isn't even on his radar as far as people consuming raw milk. So even some experts aren't worried about the transition of bird flu through raw milk. However, not all experts see things the same. Michael Kleinhans, who is a veterinarian PhD, and he's a dairy cow veterinarian and clinical associate professor at Texas A&M, here's what he had to say. Raw milk to me is a very scary thing. I even recommend those who are feeding milk to their calves to pasteurize it. And my comment in my newsletter was, oh, good grief. You mean he's saying that it would be better to pasteurize mama's milk for baby's calves? What next? So I think that you can see that the kind of the pendulum swings both ways, right? You've got people who are very, very, very adamantly against raw milk in all forms, even for a calf to drink it from his mama, which has been done. That's been done for a minute or two, as my Cameron would say. They've been doing this for a while. But also, the pendulum can swing too far the other way, and people can just be all about raw milk and not vetting not necessarily making sure that the conditions are sanitary. So we're trying to kind of land there in that middle area. So even the experts can't quite agree on things. We do know that we don't have bird flu in our cattle in Alaska. So at this point, we're just watching everything. So that's the legislative part. I don't say it to scare you, but I want you to be aware. I say this over and over and over and over. Knowledge is power. It's really easy to get sucked into propaganda, to get sucked into this could happen or that could happen or whatever. I don't think we need to do all that, but I do think we need to be aware of kind of where the federal government is going, wanting to go with raw milk and with regulations, because it could, if we get blindsided, it could affect our ability to buy raw milk, which for most of us who believe strongly in food freedom, we don't want that, right? So today we're going to talk about the benefits and why our family drinks raw milk. Yep. We are going to talk about the positives of raw milk, but I'm a realist and I know that there are risks. So I do want to talk about safety too. I think that's very, very important. because I am not a proponent of just willy-nilly buying raw milk. I think that that's nuts. And I'll share a little more in a second, but we've definitely bought milk from farmers that maybe the milk things just weren't right. But we knew that. We resolved the issue and moved on. So you definitely want to be smart when you're buying raw milk, because nobody wants to get their family sick, right? So we have a pretty strict vetting process. The health of our family is at stake, right? So we're also going to talk about where and how to source it legally in Alaska, how to use it, and what to do when you end up with too much. Okay, raw milk is getting all the bad press these days. We're going to share some truths that are on the positive side. So let's dig in. Let's start with the benefits of raw milk. So I have a chart that I'm reading off of, and this chart is from the Raw Milk Institute. So you can go to rawmilkinstitute.org and check out their site. They actually have tons of information. It's very scientific, it's very helpful, and it could ease your mind if you're just a little nervous about the consumption of raw milk. So let's start with milk the way it comes out of the cow. It has digestive enzymes. The digestive enzymes are active. So these are, they're beneficial for our body. The enzymes are very active in raw milk. In pasteurized milk, they're completely deactivated, okay? It has probiotics. Raw milk does. Those are destroyed in the pasteurization process. It has lactase-producing bacteria. These are good bacteria, mind you. Those are active in raw milk. They're destroyed in pasteurized milk. It also has healthy fats. I'm going to tell you a fact in just a little bit about milk fat that might just kind of blow your mind. It kind of blew mine. But raw milk has healthy fats, and those fats are damaged, if not completely removed, from pasteurized milk. It has protein, active protein, that are undamaged, whereas pasteurization damages them. And bioavailable vitamins and calcium and phosphorus. Those are active in raw milk. And in pasteurized milk, they're reduced or inhibited. So those are all things to consider when you're looking at raw milk. When you see this list, you'll see that in raw milk, all of these things that the milk was made to do, right? All of the beneficial properties that milk is made for, those are all active and good in raw milk. In pasteurized milk, they've either been inhibited, they're either destroyed, they've been deactivated, or they're at least reduced and inhibited. So it's just another plug for leaving things natural the way they were meant to be. Also, I don't want to get really high into this because you can do some research on the Raw Milk Institute, or there's another site that the Weston A. Price Foundation puts out. It's called A Campaign for Real Milk. It's realmilk.com, and it's got tons of information too. So I would suggest that you check that out. But there are so many studies that show the health benefits of raw milk beyond just nutritionally, but they can help with allergies. It can help with pulmonary function. It's kind of incredible. It really is a superfood if you want to use that kind of cliche of a word. So those are the benefits of raw milk. But let's talk for a second about the legalities of even buying raw milk in Alaska. So in Alaska, we have what are called, you can legally buy into a herd share. So basically what you do when you buy into a herd share is you approach a farmer and you ask to be part of their herd share, and basically you buy into it. So you pay this fee to own part of the herd. So they can range anywhere from like $20 a year to like, I thought that the highest was $100, but there's actually one doing $120 a year. Ours is $60 every 3 years, and that just gives you a share of the herd. But it only gives you a share of the herd of the specific cow that you bought into. So it's not like when that cow has a baby, then you're still part of it. So that's why most of them renew, because because over time they're having to replace that cow. So you're just renewing that herd share fee. But what you do then is then you're buying the milk every month, but it's not, you're not actually paying for the milk. What the legal mumbo jumbo says is that you're helping with the maintenance for the cow. So you're just basically paying for his upkeep. You're paying for his feed, you're paying for your portion of her feed, her upkeep, whatever that may be. And in return, you get some of her production. So the average price right now, what I'm seeing from the farms that I know are extremely clean, we're right around $20 a gallon. But please don't freak out, because there are so many ways that you can make this affordable, and I'm going to share a little bit about that. You just have to know how to use it, and you need to not waste a drop. So you can totally legally buy raw milk in Alaska for human consumption as long as you have purchased your milk share, because that you're a part owner of that cow. So you inherently take all of the risk of anything that could happen from drinking milk from that cow, which is yet another reason to be really careful about who you're buying from. Okay, choosing a dairy farmer. I don't know. I've not anyway seen that we don't have any, at least large CAFOs up here, which is a concentrated animal feeding operation. We don't have any of those up here. I don't know that I had ever experienced them until we drove from Minnesota to Idaho. And in between there were some really unpleasant places we drove by. I had no idea it was a thing. So, that was kind of a bummer to see, but we don't have those up here. But we do have varying levels of clean on our dairy farms. So you want to know that you definitely want to be paying attention to the sanitation and the cleanliness of the farm. So pasteurization kills pathogens and bacteria in milk. That's why they do this. And you can raise a cow on a CAFO or a feedlot, whatever you want to call that. You can raise a cow that way when you're pasteurizing the milk, because it doesn't matter. You're killing all the bacteria anyway. So even if things aren't clean, even if the cow has a little bit of mastitis, she's not real healthy, you still can, that's still, I guess, considered okay, because they're going to pasteurize that milk anyway, so they're going to kill all the pathogens, so it's no big deal. If your facility is clean and your animal is healthy, you don't have to take those pathogens out, because there's no pathogens in there to take out. So it's definitely something to think about. Do you want to have dirty milk and then have to clean it? Or wouldn't you rather just have milk that was clean all along? To me, it's such an obvious answer. Your primary pathogens are E. coli, Listeria, Salmonella, and Campylobacter. Typically, these come from, for the most part, either a cow with mastitis or from manure. So again, we're saying that, I feel like I'm saying this over and over, but it bears repeating over and over. If your cow is healthy and her situation, her living conditions, and especially the milking area are clean, I mean, let's be real here. There's no way that during breakup, I'm just specifically during breakup time especially, there's no keeping the mud out of the cow field. There's no way. So it's not like there's never any mud and there's always perfectly green grass. We all know better. But as long as the milking conditions are clean and sanitary, and as long as the cow is healthy, then you're not going to have to deal with these, with E. coli, Listeria, Salmonella, or Campylobacter. So here's what you need to do. You need to not be shy. When you first start being interested in visiting a dairy for the purpose of consuming their milk, you need to look around and ask questions. We had a dairy one time that didn't allow people to come by. And I said, that's okay. Like, I don't want to pop in on shoot. There are days you would say, I'm not ever eating out of her kitchen. I mean, we get busy, right? And I get behind. So I'm not always perfectly up on everything. That's fair. But we couldn't even go visit with advance notice. And I'm not sure what the reason was, but we didn't end up buying from them. We didn't end up going with them because I need to know that we can visit the place that we are getting our milk from. So that's the first thing. So that would be my first criteria. And then when you go visit, are the milking and bottling area clean? And use all your senses here. Use your sense of seeing. Look around. Does it look clean? Do the cows seem healthy? Do the cows seem happy? Also, another sense that you're really going to want to use when you're there is your sense of smell. I personally don't think barns stink. Like, I appreciate the aroma, but I've been in barns that stink, and I've been in dairies that stink. And again, if we go back to breakup, we just have to kind of write that time of year off. But your milking parlor still shouldn't stink, and it still shouldn't be caked with mud, and there's got to be that level of cleanliness. So you're looking around and you're just trying to determine, is this sanitary? Ask what their process is for milking when they bring the cow in, especially during, the challenges during breakup would be tremendous. So ask them, how do you handle this? Because there's just mud. We all deal with mud everywhere during that season. So find out where the cows spend most of their time. Do they have room to roam? Another question to ask is, if you're bringing your own jars, you're bringing jars every time you pick up, like we pick up 2 gallons of milk. So I bring 4 half-gallon jars with me every time. When you're picking those up, you can ask, okay, do you just give me my jars back? Or are the jars just put in a collective mix? If they're put in a collective mix, are you sanitizing them? Our milk lady actually sanitizes all the jars. We aren't guaranteed to have our specific jars back, but she sanitizes all of them. If she's sanitizing them, I don't care. And she does that just for that extra measure of making sure that the cleanliness is solid. So, and you just look around. Does the herd appear to be healthy and happy? Is there plenty of food for them? And then the next thing you're going to do is, now you've got your milk and you're going to take it home. I want you to smell it. Raw milk really doesn't have much of a smell. It might almost have a sweet smell. But there's nothing offensive about it, and it absolutely should not smell like an old barn. We've also bought milk that kind of smelled like an old barn, or not within that day, but within the next couple days, it already was it literally like you'd put it up to your mouth to take a drink, and you could smell and kind of taste that old barn smell. That milk was not done in sanitary conditions, and it's okay to check with your farmer and say something's not right, especially if either you're new with them and so you're not sure their practices, or if you are if you've been with them for a long time and this has never happened before, they need to know this, because who knows, something may have happened along the way that kind of broke that sanitation protocol that they have, and they're somehow unaware. So definitely be watching that milk. We get milk from a gal who she cools her milk so fast, and her milk is so clean that we can make it last for 2 weeks. That is, in my mind, now that we've gotten from her, that is just a sign of really good milk. So I would say it should last at least a week. We've always been able to get a week out of our milk, and usually more like 8 or 9 days. But with her, we can get a whole 14. As a matter of fact, we went 18 days and it was just starting to smell funky, but it wasn't bad at all. But I had a little bit of milk left, and I just stuck it in the back of my fridge, because by then I was curious, because I pick up milk every week. I was just super curious, how long is this stuff going to last? And it lasted really, really well. So I know her conditions are really clean. So some things to ask are, do you sterilize the jar before you send your milk back out? Or do you get the same jars back, or does it kind of go into a collective pot? And again, I don't mind that ours goes into a collective thing, and we don't get our specific jars back because she sterilizes every single jar as it comes through. So you could ask how often do they milk, and when the milk that you get, will it be fresh, or how old will it be? We did a cow share a while back where they were milking every day, but they were only doing pickups twice a week. And so on the top of the lid, they'd put on there the day that it had been milked, and we were getting our usual 2 gallons. So I'd grab 1 gallon of the older milk, and we just know to drink that first. Then I grab a gallon of the newer milk because that's going to last us a little bit longer. So that was how we handled that situation. We're not so those are some things to ask your farmer. And here's the thing, there are lots of dairy farmers out there, and there's 2 things. It's okay to say, I don't think this is for me. It just doesn't feel safe for my family. But it's also okay to have a talk with your farmer and say, man, I just am, this is my concern. I wouldn't blast them. I wouldn't, I don't know. This world is so weird these days. It seems like everybody has lost their ability to communicate. But I think an honest conversation with your farmer and saying, I don't understand this process or that process or the reasoning behind it, because these are farmers. They know their stuff. So sometimes what seems concerning to me, just by some open dialogue and having a communication, you learn, oh, well, they do this process because, like, someone might say, no, your milk is 48 hours before you get it. Well, that's because they're making sure that the cream has risen to the top and everything is ready and it's fully chilled. So they want to make sure that everything has been taken care of before they give it to you. Well, that's fine, but you just need to know the reasoning. Our milk is done so fast that sometimes it's not fully chilled. She works really hard to chill it super fast, but sometimes I get there faster. And but that's okay because I have an insulated bag. It's got ice in it, and I know that I'm going to put it in the very back of my refrigerator as soon as I get home so it can finish its chilling process. So, just asking why and getting an education sometimes will take you a lot further too. Okay. So, let's talk about how to use your raw milk. You can just drink it, of course, which is the best way. It's my favorite way, but my second favorite. First favorite would, of course, be ice cream, because ice cream makes the whole world go round and it makes everything better, right? But when you pick up your milk, if your milk is fresh, so if you've, like I was saying, ours is usually pretty chilled, but sometimes it's not fully chilled when I pick it up. So I'm going to bring it home and I'm going to put it in the very back of my fridge, and I'm going to let it sit there for 24 to 48 hours. It takes a full 48 hours for all of the cream to separate and rise to the top. So if you're wanting to use your cream and if you're wanting to skim that cream off, then you're going to need to let it sit for a full 24 hours, for a full 48 hours before you skim it and use it. So that's something to consider when you're getting your milk shares. Is it doesn't just need, like we pick up on Thursday, it doesn't just need to go from Thursday to Thursday. My milk actually needs to last until Saturday, and I'm not going to start using the other milk until Saturday because I've let that cream rise all the way to the top. Although sometimes we do it in half-gallon jars, and we'll take one of the half gallons, and that will just shake it and use it for our milk and leave it full fat milk, because that's when it's best, is when it's just everything together. So, but once your cream has risen to the top, you can skim off the cream and use that for alternate things like making butter or whipping cream or whatever. But here's something that is interesting to know when you're skimming the cream off of your milk. Cream actually has 3 levels. So when you look at your cream, if you look really closely, it starts out really, really thick and heavy at the top. And the further down you go, the closer you get to the what would be the milk, the thinner it gets, and even the lighter, more translucent it gets. So the top is similar to heavy whipping cream. That's like the good stuff. You can make whipping cream out of it. You can make butter out of that. You can actually make butter out of the whole thing of cream, but it definitely sets up better if you're just using the top 2/3. Which the second part of that, so you've got your heavy cream at the top. A third of it is going to be what would be called half and half, and that would be like half cream, half milk. It's not actually, it's all cream, but it's the consistency of half and half. And then the third part would be the bottom part is just your light cream, and it's a lot thinner. And we don't actually skim that off. We actually leave that in and keep shaking up our milk, because remember when I said I'm gonna give you some facts about milk fat that might surprise you. So believe it or not, this is, we doubt our creator, but he sure knew what he was doing when he created all things, right? So milk needs fat for digestion. The sugars in milk need fat for digestion. So you can do research on your own. I'm not going to go into all of this, but skim milk is really, really, really hard for your body to digest, because all of the fat, or most of the fat, has been taken out of it. The fat in milk and the sugars in milk are meant to go together for digestion. They're meant to go together for absorption, for digestion, and that's just how it works. So when you strip that milk of all of the fat or most of the fat, then you've created a product that is really, really, really hard to digest. And it's going to be, it's going to be an inferior product. And so a lot of people who believe they are lactose intolerant aren't, but it's because they've been drinking 2% or skim milk, and they haven't had the fat to go with it to make it so that it's a fully digestible product. So we're not going to go into the theories behind why milk is being skimmed at the store, for sale, but that's another thing you can Google if you want to go down that rabbit hole. I have to ask myself, so here's the bottom line. You need the fat to help digest the sugars in the milk. So why are we messing with everything? When God created all the things, when God created food, he made them nutritionally for us. But then we feel like we have to go in there and mess with them, and we often aren't helping. like when we take when we pasteurize milk and strip it of all of the vitamins, well, then we fortify it with chemicals that we call vitamins and put them back in. Well, that's not even right. That is not, of course, that's not going to be the same product as just what was natural, what was created by nature. So, if someone in your house doesn't digest milk well, make sure they're getting the fats with the sugars, because that can make all the difference. There's also A1 and A2. I opted not to get into that because I was trying to keep this podcast a little bit shorter. But you can also look into the digestibility of the A2 cows, which is what we drink. And it just is missing that A1 protein, whereas most milk has A1 and A2, and the A1 protein is a little harder to digest as well. So, here's how we use our milk. We drink it raw. I usually will keep once a week. We go through half gallon or maybe a little more, but we drink it. I oftentimes will skim the cream off of all of them, or off of 3 of the 4 half gallons that we get. And Gene usually uses that in his coffee. Sometimes we'll make whipped cream. Like right now, we have strawberries everywhere. We have so many strawberries. So it's perfect just to make that whipped cream, to put it all up on top of your fresh strawberries. And oh, it's so good. So you can make butter. You can make yogurt from your raw milk. You can make sour cream. Those are all really simple things to make. Or here's another thing to remember. Let's pretend that you got your raw milk. You pour everybody a glass, everybody's getting ready for bed, you're tired, and you forget to put the milk back in the fridge, and you wake up in the morning and there it is sitting on the counter. Guess what? It's okay. You're not going to probably want to drink that as fresh milk, but now you can leave it on the counter and let it clabber. Another thing we're not going to get into today, but clabbered milk is one of the richest foods that you can offer your family. And there is definitely a time and a place for clabbered milk. And so I would encourage you to have some knowledge before it happens so that you, number one, so you're not frustrated and don't freak out, but also so you know what to do with that milk that's been sitting on the counter or that's just getting kind of old in the fridge. If that, we just simply don't have that happen. But if it did, that's something that's good to know, is what to do with clabbered milk. Okay. What happens if you get too much milk? So let's say you think, oh, we're going to go through 2 gallons of milk a week, and you just don't. And so now it's time to pick up another 2 gallons, but you've got a gallon left in your fridge. Here are some ways to use your milk. So the first thing that I would do is make yogurt. And I make yogurt a gallon at a time. It lasts forever. I can't, we eat ours really fast, but it can last a month easily in the refrigerator. So I store it in a glass in a glass 1 gallon jar, or actually I put it in 2 half-gallon jars is what I do. And that's how we store our yogurt, and it just keeps a really long time. I actually make my yogurt in the dehydrator, but if you go to our YouTube page, there is a tutorial on making yogurt. If you're interested in all things raw milk, you can join Alaska Homestead Academy, and we actually are going to be doing a whole raw milk course in there on things to do with it, how to make cheese, how to make yogurt, how to make butter, all the things, how to make whipping cream to go on top of your strawberries or whatever. And we're going to be going over all that within Alaska Homestead Academy this winter. So another thing to do is New England Cheese Making Supply is probably my favorite website for recipes. And what's fun is they actually sell all the supplies too, and their recipes are they're put in order by difficulty. So they have some really crazy hard, difficult to make cheeses. I haven't even gotten into that, but they have some really, really simple cheeses that are fun, and they're neat for you to try with your family. So if I had extra milk, that's probably, if I wasn't putting it into yogurt, I'd probably make some cheese. But that means you have to have some supplies ahead of time. So go to New England Cheese Making Supply, get some supplies, pick 2 or 3 recipes, print them out, get the supplies for them, so you've got those on hand in case you have some milk left over. Or sometimes you can get extra milk from your farmer and go ahead and make some cheese too. Here's another thing to consider when you're buying raw milk. Milk is a seasonal product. Most people don't think about it this way. Because we're used to going to the grocery store 12 months out of the year, 52 weeks, 365 days, there is milk on the shelf. So we don't think about the fact that milk is seasonal. But with our farmers up here, especially because most of our farms are really small, they have, 2 or 1 to 3 cows that they're milking daily. They have to dry the cow up before it gives. First of all, you're breeding your cow every year, and every year you have to dry the cow up before it gives birth. And then after it gives birth for a little while, we're not drinking that milk. That milk goes to the colostrum and stuff goes to the calf, and then there's this transition time, and then you can go back to milking. So it could be up to 3 months of the year that your dairy doesn't offer milk. And everyone does it different. Sometimes they'll just kind of be like, if they have 3 cows, they'll try and stagger it so that they always have 2 cows in production. But you're still not getting as much milk. So they might say, well, everybody, for us, we might have to go down to 1 gallon or 1.5 gallons a week for a little while to make sure that everybody gets production. Some people will say, well, your cow that you are a part of is going to be out for 3 months, so you don't get any milk. So then everyone else who is part owner of the other 2 cows, they get to stay to their full amount. Every farmer does it a little different. But remembering that milk is seasonal is important. So if you end up with extra milk, you can just simply put it in plastic containers. It's really hard to freeze jars. Jars are just not made like they used to be, and I hate plastic too, but it's what freezes well. So you can put it in a plastic container and put it in the freezer, and then when you're not getting as much milk as you wanted, you're still going to have all the milk you need. Now, here's the thing to know about thawing raw milk. You want to thaw it in the refrigerator, because if you thaw it out on the counter, it thaws a little bit fast, and it's actually gonna clabber sort of, and it's just not gonna produce. It's not gonna be a very drinkable milk. If you thaw it out in the fridge, it is very, very, very similar to had you just gotten it fresh. So it's still better than going to the grocery store. So remembering that, that's an excellent thing to do with extra milk, especially if you're relying on it for your family year round. So the other thing that I want to mention is if you're not ready to move to raw milk, but you want to support local, our milk producer actually took a break this winter, which she needed to, and her cow needed to. This was the smart move for her, and I supported her completely. However, that meant that we were going to have to buy milk, and I could not bring myself to buy just heavily production grocery store milk, even though, I mean, I'm telling you, $5 a gallon is kind of appealing, but it isn't when I know that what I'm giving my family is pointless. Anyway, so our workaround was Alaska Range Dairy, which I think it's sold at Walmart. I know it's sold at all the Three Bears. It's a local milk, and they vat pasteurize, meaning they minimally pasteurize it. They pasteurize it to the very minimum to make it legal, which means that their practices have to be good because the milk can't have a bunch of disease in it because they're just barely pasteurizing it. So I appreciate Alaska Range Dairy being a secondary option, and it's one that we used for a while. They only sell whole milk. So, and the cream does still rise on it because it's not homogenized. So you just have to shake it up and drink it. But again, you want the whole milk anyway. So because you want that milk fat for digestibility, that's how it was made to be consumed. So if you aren't ready to go the raw milk route, but you want to buy local milk, definitely Alaska Range Dairy is a wonderful backup option, I guess I would say. So I want to thank you for listening. I hope this answers some questions that you have about raw milk. In the show notes, where I'm gonna have some information about some websites where you can do more research. I'll link to our YouTube videos that we have, and I'll link to Alaska Homestead Academy if you're interested in doing the big full course on all things milk. You can join us there. And if you have any questions at all, you can email me at tandy@commongroundalaska.com, or you can just go to our website and fill out, there's a spot where you can ask a question and we'll answer. I try to answer my emails immediately so they don't get buried. So, or just comment and let us know your thoughts or any questions that you have. I'm more than happy to answer, and would love to kind of help you get on this journey of raw milk. Take care.